Chinnaya v. Ramayya, 1882. Introduction. Chinnaya v. Ramayya, 1882, is an important case under the Indian Contract Act, 1872, which explains the concept of consideration moving from a third party. This case clearly shows that, under Indian law, consideration need not move from the promisee alone. Facts of the case. An old lady gifted some property to her daughter, Chinnaya, on the condition that the daughter would pay an annual allowance to the old lady's brother, Ramayya. The daughter accepted the gift and agreed to pay the allowance but later failed to do so. Ramayya filed a suit to recover the amount. Issue before the court. Chinnaya v. Ramayya, 1882. The main issue before the court was whether a person who is a stranger to the consideration, but a party to the contract, can enforce the contract under the Indian Contract Act, 1872. In other words, the court had to decide whether consideration must move only from the promisee, or whether it can move from any other person, and still make the contract enforceable. Judgment. The Madras High Court held that Ramayya could recover the allowance from Chinnaya. The Madras High Court held that Ramayya was entitled to recover the allowance from Chinnaya. The court ruled that the contract was valid and enforceable, even though the consideration did not move from Ramayya himself. The court clearly stated that under the Indian Contract Act, 1872, consideration may move from the promisee or any other person. Therefore, a person who is a party to the contract can enforce it, even if he is a stranger to the consideration. Principle laid down. The court laid down the following important principle. Under the Indian Contract Act, 1872, consideration need not move from the promisee alone, it may move from any other person. A stranger to consideration can sue, provided he is a party to the contract. Indian law differs from English law on this point, as English law requires consideration to move from the promisee. This principle is a landmark rule on consideration and is very important. Importance of the case. The case of Chinnaya v. Ramayya is important because it clearly explains the Indian law on consideration. It established that, unlike English law, the Indian Contract Act allows consideration to move from a third party. As long as a person is a party to the contract, he can enforce it even if he has not himself provided the consideration. This judgment highlights the flexible and practical approach of Indian contract law and is a landmark case frequently cited while discussing consideration and privity of contract. Conclusion. In conclusion, the decision in Chinnaya v. Ramayya firmly establishes that under the Indian Contract Act, 1872, consideration may move from the promisee or any other person. A person who is a party to the contract can enforce it even if he is a stranger to the consideration. This landmark judgment clearly distinguishes Indian law from English law and remains a fundamental authority on the law of consideration, making it highly important.